At this time, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Middletown Township Board of Supervisors. Would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Corporal, will you please call roll?
Mr. Kizak.
Here.
Ms. Payne. Here. Ms. Hanna.
Here.
Ms. Kane.
Here.
We also have Township Manager Ms. Teely Cools, Assistant Manager Mr. Vala, Township Solicitor Mr. Esposito, and for a Township Engineer Ms. I'm going to say it wrong, Culebra? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corporal. We have a number of special items and announcements tonight. First, the next Board of Supervisors meeting will be Monday, May 2nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Second, we have a proclamation for Parliamentary Emphasis Month, which I will read now. Whereas Parliamentary Emphasis Month was first designated by the Congress of the United States and President Ronald Reagan in 1982, and whereas April is the birth month of Thomas Jefferson, the author of the first American Manual on Parliamentary Practice, and whereas governing bodies across the United States, including Middletown Township, utilize principles of parliamentary law to conduct the business of government, and whereas the Parliamentarians of Bucks County was incorporated in April 2021 and is the only unit of the National Association of Parliamentarians in the Bucks County area, and whereas the Parliamentarians of Bucks County are the second largest unit of the National Association of Parliamentarians in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, now therefore be it proclaimed that we, the Board of Supervisors of the Township of Middletown, Bucks County, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, proclaim the month of April 2022 as Parliamentary Emphasis Month. Be it further proclaimed that we, the Board of Supervisors of Middletown Township, County of Bucks, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, do hereby offer our sincere congratulations to the Parliamentarians of Bucks County. Middletown Township Board of Supervisors proclaim this day the 18th of April, 2022. And I'd like to, I believe we have some members of the Parliamentarians of Bucks County here, so I'd just like to, if we could give a round of applause to congratulate them.
Just want to say thank you very much for the proclamation, and if we could get a picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want us to come down? We'll come down.
Great. However you do it, it's fine with us. Hmm? I don't know.
Yeah, we can go up there.
I say just stand up there. Yeah. Yeah.
Next, we have, I'm excited to announce that Middletown Township won a Governor's Award for Local Government Excellence. This was for innovative planning and sound use practices. This is the award. Myself, Vice Chair Payne, Township Manager Stephanie Teely-Cools, Assistant Township Manager Nick Vala. We were in Harrisburg at the state capitol to accept this award on Wednesday of last week. And I won't read the whole citation, but just briefly it says, whereas Middletown Township is being honored by the Governor's Center for Local Government Services in the Department of Community and Economic Development with a 2022 Governor's Award for Local Government Excellence in the category of Innovative Planning and Sound Land Use Practices. So it's a really prestigious award. Not a lot of municipalities are fortunate enough to win this, and so we're just thrilled to have it. And I just want to commend my colleagues here on the Board of Supervisors for everything they did that allowed us to win this award. It really was due to our climate action plan that was enacted last year, which was due in large part to the efforts of everybody sitting up here, but also to Mr. Valla, our Assistant Township Manager, who really did a lot of the heavy lifting, our Township Manager, Stephanie Tealy-Cools, and the members of our Environmental Action Committee, who were a huge part of this. So thank you to everyone involved, and it really is a great accomplishment for the township. Next, we have recognition for the William Penn Fire Company. And so what I will do is I'd like to come down, and as I call your name, members of the William Penn Fire Company, please come up to receive your recognition. Okay, and again, this is, can everybody hear me? Is this working? Yeah. All right. This is for the William Penn Fire Company. And first we have Cheryl Chamberlain, 5 years as an associate member. Cheryl, you here? Yeah. Next, we have Riley Collins, William Penn Fire Company, 5 years as a firefighter. Riley, come on up. I want to give these to you,
Okay,
and you can hand them out after. How about that?
that sounds good.
All right, next we have Tyler Horvath, 5 years as a firefighter. Next, we have Katie McDevitt, 5 years, associate member. Congratulations. Thank you. Michael Motz, 5 years, associate member. Thank you. Next, we have Chris Russell, 35 years, firefighter and trustee. Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate it. There you go.
Congratulations.
Jeff Deagle, 45 years, firefighter and vice president. Rick Montanaro, 50 years, associate member and secretary. Congratulations. Thank you so very much. And last but certainly not least, a gentleman I had the pleasure of meeting the other day, John Deagle Sr., 55 years, firefighter and president. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can we just bring all of you up real quick? We'll do a photograph. Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
I was going to talk about this later, but while we're on the subject of fire companies, I would just like to mention that, as many of you know, we did have a strategic plan put together by a consulting group to assess fire services in the community and what we can do to improve them. We had, on Saturday, April 9th, a session that was attended by representatives from all 4 volunteer companies, representatives from Middletown 244, our own Department of Fire and Emergency Management, the Board of Supervisors, our Assistant Manager, Mr. Valor, our Manager, Ms. Tioli-Cools, as well as our consultants, and it was really a tremendous day to get everybody together in a room and just brainstorm about strategies and solutions to try to come up with a common set of goals and objectives to move fire services forward. And it was just the first step in what will certainly be a long process, but it was a really positive day, and I really am optimistic about where we are going from a fire services perspective in Middletown Township. So I want to note that, and I want to again thank sincerely the members of the 4 volunteer fire companies and our own Fire and Emergency Management Department for joining us and putting in a lot of time and effort to try to come up with some solutions. So thanks again. Moving along on the agenda, we do have a couple of upcoming events. The first is Earth Day. Earth Day, again, will be this Saturday, April 23rd, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Court Creek Park. This is a great event. There's a lot of great exhibits and things for kids to do, so if you can come out to Court Creek Park on Saturday, join us for Earth Day. Secondly, Wolf-A-Palooza is going to be Sunday, May 8th. Registration begins at 7:30 a.m., and this is at Forsythia Crossing Park. That's Wolf-A-Palooza. And finally, we have our own Township Human Relations Commission is going to be presenting community conversations. This particular event, which is going to be Monday, May 9th at 7 p.m. here in the Public Hall, the topic will be Understanding and Appreciating the Native American Experience. And the tagline for this is What We Didn't Learn in School. So this will be a discussion for the Middletown Township Human Relations Commission and the Coalition of Natives and Allies, thought-provoking presentation on Native American history. So again, this is going to be Monday, May 9th at 7 p.m. Oh, in addition to being in the Public Hall, you can also do this virtually. So we'll have information on how to join via Zoom if you want to attend that virtually. So that's a great event if you can make it. And that is all on announcements and special items, so we'll move on to public comment on non-agenda items. This is public comment on non-agenda items only. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda items. Item A, consideration of authorizing payment of April 18th, 2022 bills list in the amount of $684,220.31. Item B, consideration of approving the April 4th, 2022 minutes of the public meeting of the Middletown Township Board of Supervisors. Item C, consideration of approving the April 9th, 2022 minutes of the special meeting of the Middletown Township Board of Supervisors. Item D, consideration of approving resolution number 22-12R, authorizing submission to the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission Transportation and Community Development Initiative Grant Program. Item E, consideration of an escrow release number 2 for the 1222 West Lincoln Highway land development in the amount of $15,944.50. Item F, consideration of approving temporary construction easements and agreements of sale for PennDOT right-of-way along Brownsville Road. And finally, item G, consideration of approving resolution number 22-13R, Middletown Boulevard and Mall access, and resolution number 22-14R, Woodburn Road and 4th Street / Oxford Valley Mall access for TE 160 signal modifications. Is there a motion on the consent agenda items?
Here, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Thank you, Ms.
second.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. Thank you, Ms. Corporal. There's been a motion and a second. Are there any board questions? Are there any questions from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda items carry 5-0. Next on the agenda, consideration of enacting ordinance number 21-09, age-qualified overlay. Mr. Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Cusack. As everyone might recall, we have continued the hearing for this ordinance numerous times since the beginning of January. So I'm going to open now the public hearing on the proposed ordinance titled An Ordinance of Middletown Township, amending the Township zoning ordinance and zoning map, creating an age-qualified overlay district. The proposed ordinance has been advertised, posted at the property, filed with the law library, and sent to the owners of the affected property, all in accordance with the municipality's planning code and the second-class township code. I'm going to submit as exhibits an affidavit of publication from the Courier-Times that the notice was published twice on December 6th and December 13th, correspondence to the property owners about the proposed ordinance, a certification of posting at the property by the zoning officer, and proof of filing with the law library. I'll ask at this time if anybody wants to have party status for the ordinance.
Good evening. My name is Zachary Sivertson. I'm an attorney with Eastburn and Gray. I'm here tonight on behalf of Linda Mead and Jeff Miller, two residents who are also named parties in the stipulation that will be considered by the board later this evening. I just want to note our participation and attendance at the hearing for the record. Thank you.
Okay, status is noted.
Rob Gunlock, on behalf of KTMT Stone LP. They are the appellant in a pending matter pertaining to this property and the equitable owner of the subject property. I've also been asked on behalf of Jeff Garton and Don Marshall to request party status on behalf of the underlying property owners, which is the estate of Ezra Stone, the estate of Ezra Joseph Seeger Stone, and Francine Stone. Thank you.
Party status is noted for all the parties that have requested, as they all are part of the stipulation, which will be the next agenda item that is related to the Stone Farm, and this ordinance has related to the Stone Farm property. So I'll go over quickly what the ordinance is about. The purpose of the proposed ordinance is to create an overlay district over designated portions of the township to allow development of a community of persons 55 years of age and over, which provides for a variety of residential housing types and recreational facilities. The overlay district may be applied to those parcels of land that include a declaration that at least one occupant of any dwelling unit is at least 55 years of age or older. The property that is currently designated to be included in the age-qualified overlay district is the 168 tract of land located along Route 413, Tollgate Road, and Fulling Mill Road in Middletown Township, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, more formally known as Bucks County Tax Parcel ID number 22-005-007, referred to commonly as the Stone Farm. The point of an overlay district is to create an additional special zoning district over top of an existing base zoning district. The existing zoning district on the Stone Farm is currently RA3 and RA2. It cuts the property almost in half. Those zoning districts will remain on the Stone Farm property. If this ordinance is passed, this will just be an additional regulations on the property. The board may recall that we discussed the drafting and advertising of this proposed ordinance at a meeting in November of 2021, in which there was a presentation regarding possible future development of the Stone Farm if a settlement occurred between the parties. The proposed ordinance that was drafted was modeled after the township's existing age-qualified community zoning district. It was almost copied pretty much word for word. We actually reduced just the density permitted on it. Some of the site regulations that apply to the ordinance are it's a maximum density of 2 units per acre, a maximum impervious surface of 40%, a maximum building coverage of 20%. There is a minimum site requirement for any age-qualified community of 85 acres. There are a required 3 housing types required if the acreage is over 125 acres of land, but only 1 housing type if it's under 125 acres of land. There is a minimum open space requirement of 35% of the gross site area for any community. There's also 25-foot buffer yard requirements along all property lines. There is also a requirement that there is a pedestrian circulation system required as part of any kind of development with an age-qualified community. When proposing such a zoning change ordinance, we usually try to review a traffic impact analysis and other types of analysis, we looked at this. An age-qualified community would actually decrease the traffic to 1/3 of what a single-family development community would cause. And also, we looked at a fiscal impact analysis that showed an estimated positive surplus of tax revenue to the township and school district of over $1.5 million compared to what a single-family development would bring in. The proposed ordinance was sent to the Bucks County Planning Commission and the Township Planning Commission for review, and they found that the proposed ordinance is compatible with the surrounding uses and consistent with the township comprehensive plan. The Bucks County Planning Commission did not have any concerns with the ordinance, and the Township Planning Commission recommended approval of the ordinance. I'm going to recommend to the board tonight that after the hearing for this ordinance is concluded, the board continues the vote on the ordinance until the May 2nd Board of Supervisor meeting. The reason for continuing this vote, as everyone knows, it is related to the next agenda item regarding the stipulation. And there are a couple items that are still needed to be received. But we would like to hold the hearing tonight to get all comments on the ordinance. If the board was inclined to approve both the ordinance and settlement discussed later on, certain items will still need to be obtained. Does the board have any questions regarding the ordinance?
I don't have any questions. Should we make a motion to continue it this time and then hear public comment once there's a motion, or should we close the record first?
I don't want to close the record because there is technically party status. If they wanted to put anything else on the record for it, we will allow anybody, Mr. Zvertson or Mr. Gunlack, if they want to put anything on, they certainly can. Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, this is for party status. We will have public comment for you to speak as well. At this point, we're just going to allow them, Mr. Gunlack or Mr. Zvertson.
Thank you. Nothing further than what we've already put in the record.
Okay.
We have no additional items to add.
Okay. So then I would ask for the board to make a motion, then we can open it up for public comment after that.
All right, I'll make a motion to continue consideration of enacting ordinance number 21-09, age qualified overlay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any board questions? And at this time, are there any questions or comments from the public?
Okay. So if there's any questions from the public, you can certainly make them now. I do want to say to everyone that there is going to be the next agenda item is a stone farm, so any comments specifically on the stone farm matter can be brought up at that time. I would ask anything that's questioned on the ordinance be discussed right now.
Is there any public comment or questions on the age qualified overlay ordinance? Seeing none, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of continuing this, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Esposito. Next on the agenda, consideration of stipulation of settlement and land use appeal number 2019-08733, KTMT Stone LP versus Middletown Township Board of Supervisors and Middletown Township. Mr. Esposito again.
Okay. So as everyone is aware, Metropolitan Development, through its entity KTMT Stone LP, filed a subdivision and land development with application with Middletown in 2015 for the 168-acre tract of land known as the Stone Farm. Specifically, the developer at that time sought to construct a residential development consisting of 124 single-family dwellings. After numerous planning commission meetings and the Board of Supervisors meeting, the board denied the application in November of 2019. The applicant then filed a land use appeal with the Court of Common Pleas, and the matter has been in litigation since then. Jeff Miller and Linda Mead, who are representatives of the same Savestone Metal Farms group, intervened in that litigation. For the past 6 months, as we've had numerous meetings, we have all been discussing possible settlement of the litigation, have had numerous public meetings in front of the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, and the developer themselves has held just public meetings with the residents to try and come up with a resolution to the litigation. So the parties, myself, Mr. Gunlack, Mr. Zvertson, and his counsel, have drafted a stipulation of settlement that incorporates all of the terms that have been discussed over the past few months and agreed upon in principle for a possible settlement to the litigation that is going to be in front of the board tonight. The stipulation of settlement is in final form with exhibits attached, and it has already been signed by the developer, KTMT Stone LP, as well as Linda Mead and Jeff Miller, representatives of the same Stone Meadow Farms group. There are some additional signatures that will probably be needed at the board, and also Francine Stone and Joyce Stone as the executors of the estate of Ezra Stone and the estate of Joseph Stone are also required, and those have been discussed and expected to be received soon. I wanted to go over with the board some of the terms of the stipulation settlement, and let everyone know what all of the main terms of it are. As everyone knows, there is a conservation easement that will be placed on the property. If everyone looks over at the slide over there, that shows the conservation easement plan. Any settlement is contingent upon the owners of the Stone Farm entering into and recording a conservation easement with Bucks County for approximately 67 acres of conserved land that abuts Bowling Mill Road. The agreement of sale for the conservation easement was executed by all parties and approved by the Bucks County Commissioners at their April 6th meeting. The conserved land will be kept as open space except for some permitted agricultural uses. The conserved land will be subdivided into 2 separate parcels of approximately 33.5 acres each, containing a building envelope within the conserved land, which are approximately 2 acres each, with the right to construct no more than 1 single-family home and related accessory buildings in each of the building envelopes. That type of building envelope is typical for conservation easements. As part of the stipulation, there will be required a subdivision of the property. The board will need to approve the subdivision of the conserved land into 2 separate parcels, and the 1 conserved parcel would then be combined with the existing farmstead, which is approximately 9.5 acres. That existing farmstead has 2 single-family homes, some barns, and some other accessory structures already in it. The subdivision plan would also then create a 3rd lot of approximately 89 acres on the eastern portion of the property closer to Route 413. This 89-acre parcel would be the developed lot. The township engineer has already reviewed the subdivision plan and has found it acceptable. The remaining, as I discussed, the remaining 89 acres of land will be then developed into 159 age-qualified single-family detached and semi-detached dwellings. The plan that is up there right now is the proposed development plan. You can see on the right side of the screen, can I reach over there? Nope. The right side of the screen is the conservation easement area. The left side of the screen has 24.5 acres of common open area on Route 13 that will have trails throughout. The middle portion of the property, the middle portion of the property here will be the 159 age-qualified homes, which consists of twin homes. There will be 17 single-family homes, which are 10 of them are up here, and an additional some down here. The reason that the single-family homes were provided here and here was to give additional space. The twin homes go deeper. The single-family homes would give more buffer space to the Summit Trace area, as well as the area along Tollgate Road. There is also approximately 15 acres of common open areas throughout the rest of the community. All of the open space area in the community, here, and some of the trails through here, will be maintained by a community association that the developer will set up if they build the community. In addition to the open space through here, you can see the green space up here in Summit Trace. The community association would then also be in charge of maintaining all of the open space throughout the Summit Trace development. As I said before, the pedestrian trails will run through the development, through all the common open areas, and a trail easement will be granted to the township to permit public use of the pedestrian trails The form of the trail easement has already been reviewed and approved by all the parties and will be attached to the stipulation as an exhibit. The roads throughout the development will be privately owned and maintained by the community association. There is also a landscape buffer that will be installed between the proposed homes and the existing homes on Summit Trace. So right here, there's going to be a big landscape buffer right there, and there will also be a berm of 4 to 6 feet right here. There will be no berm on Route 413. It has also been proposed between the parties that 2 marker signs will be installed by the developer, one at the Tollgate Road crossing right here where it would cross over into Core Creek Park, which will have a pedestrian flashing light, and another marker somewhere on the trails up on the front closer to 413. The marker signs will provide a history of the property, and the language will be agreed upon by the parties at that time. The design of the homes and the clubhouse will be generally as shown on the plans and specs that will be attached to as exhibits. Nick, if you can go there. This is what the design of the clubhouse is proposed to look like, and the homes are proposed to look similar to this. All right. As part of the occupancy requirements for the age-qualified development, the declaration for the community shall limit the occupancy to those persons at least 18 years of age, provided persons under 18 can occupy a dwelling for no more than 90 days per calendar year, unless they are handicap dependent protected under the Fair Housing Act. The roadway improvements that would be with this development, there is going to be a full access drive at the northern access point to the development along 413, which is essentially across from the access to the George School right now. There will be another a southern access drive closer to St. Mary's. That will be a right in, right out only. So right here is where the right in, right out would be. Right here is where the full access drive would be. There will be a pedestrian crossing over to Core Creek Park with a flasher that will connect with the trails. As part of the stipulation also, the developer has agreed to pay the legal fees of the township and the resident interveners for all the costs incurred during the litigation. For moving forward, the developer and resident interveners have already signed the stipulation, and again, the owners are expected to sign it soon and provide it to us. If the board is inclined to approve this stipulation of settlement, the stipulation would then be filed with the court and would need to be approved by the judge overseeing the case. The subdivision plan creating the 3 separate lots and the conservation easement would then be recorded, and the developer would then proceed with its land development application and process with the township. So even if this is approved tonight, the developer would still need to provide fully engineered plans for the development to the township, for the township's consultants to review. It would then go back in front of the Planning Commission to get their review and comments. And if it was acceptable then, it would come back then in front of the Board of Supervisors for approval. Once final land development plans are reviewed and approved, the plans would then be recorded. At that point in time, the litigation would then be discontinued and ended. As noted previously, the ordinance for the age-qualified overlay district would still need to be voted upon and approved prior to the land development application moving forward and the conservation easement plan being recorded. So that's why that would need to be voted on at the May meeting. If there's any questions on any of this, either myself or Mr. Gunlack could certainly answer any of the questions of the board.
I don't have any questions, but I would just like to comment that we've come a really long way from where we started for a proposal that had 124 single-family homes and essentially development over the bulk of this property to where we are now with preservation of a substantial majority of the property. A proposal that preserves the farm character of this parcel. Over 100 acres are going to now be conserved. There is going to be, as compared to the original plan, a net positive impact to the school district, positive impact to the township from a tax standpoint. Decreased traffic implication as compared to the original proposal. And while I understand that full preservation was the goal of a lot of residents when this process first started, where we've gotten to and where we've come with this proposal is a substantial, in my mind, improvement over what we were looking at originally for this property. And the fact that it preserves so much of the property and preserves the character, the farm character of the property for our community, for me, is a big reason why I'm pleased to support this and plan to vote in favor of it. And for me also, what is really important is that this proposal has the support of Jeff Miller and Linda Mead and the Save Stone Farm Coalition. This, getting to where we are now, certainly the Board of Supervisors played a role, but it would not have happened without the diligent and tireless efforts of Jeff, Linda, and your group. This would not have happened without them. And it also would not have happened without Metropolitan and their residents, Fox Lane, and everything they did in willing to be creative and willing to compromise. And the fact that we were all able to come together and figure out a solution that we can all be proud of and all be satisfied with is just, it's an amazing accomplishment, and it's something that I'm really, really proud of, and I hope everybody else is as well. So again, not a question, just a comment about how far we've come and to give my support for this proposal. And if any of the other supervisors have questions or want to make comments, please feel free.
Jump in and ask Nick if he could actually show the prior plan, the 124 single-family home plan, to give a comparison of what it was proposed to be. That was the previous plan that was on the table in November of 2019. And then which doesn't show too much open space at all. And then if we went back to the plan that is proposed now, that shows over 105 acres of land that will be preserved.
Yeah, I mean, it's significant. It's striking, the difference between where we started and where we are now. And again, I'm really, really, really proud of it. And also, it is worth noting that all of the taxpayer funds that were expended to fight this battle are all going to be reimbursed, and all of the resources that Save Stone Meadows Farm expended to fight this battle will be reimbursed. So not only were all these efforts successful, but it will end up with no financial impact to the taxpayers or to the members of Save Stone Meadows Farm who fought this battle. So, I mean, this just all the way around is just a tremendous, tremendous outcome for not only everybody that's involved as stakeholders, but for the community as a whole.
I would just also like to reiterate what Supervisor Cusack had said as well. You know, I was in the audience last year and throughout the rest of the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board meetings, and I was speaking up. So on top of, you know, thanking the developer and thanking Linda and Jeff and the group, I'd also like to thank all of the residents that came out and continued to voice that we needed something better for our community. This is a struggle, right? Because I think we ultimately wanted to preserve 100%. But I think looking up here, this is a win. We were able to preserve a majority of the farm and keep that as open space. So I just wanted to, you know, thank all of the parties, the developer, and also the other board members that originally, you know, voted against this and made the ability to compromise, you know, available to us.
So I'm just going to reiterate, again, I think that you both stated it so beautifully. I really wanted to especially thank Jeff and Linda and all the community members that came out, because you really made the difference, and I give you all the kudos. This was just an amazing accomplishment, I feel like, and I know that everybody's not going to be satisfied. We understand that people aren't going to be 100% satisfied because, you know, we're members of the community also, and we wanted to see open space preserved. I mean, that's, you know, everybody's goal, but in the end, it's such an achievement, and I think that so much space is going to be preserved, and we thank the developer for really working with everybody. But really, I hope that everybody's as satisfied, and I know that we give you so much credit for all the work that you've done.
In an effort to not be redundant, I also want to thank the county for working so hard on this and preserving that much land. I think you can definitely see a stark difference from the plan that was proposed in 2019 versus where we're at today, and I think it's a huge accomplishment for everybody, and I applaud the community for rallying and standing up. I too was in the audience in 2019 when everybody voted no and everybody cheered. So I know that for some folks this probably isn't exactly what we wanted, but you can definitely see the comparison, and I think it goes to show that when you care about something and you get involved, you really can make a difference. So thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions from the board members? Then I will make a motion to approve the township entering into the proposed stipulation of settlement with exhibits with the appellant and all interveners for the land use appeal of KTMT Stone LP, Bucks County Court of Common Pleas number 2019-08733, and authorize the township solicitor, consultants, and staff to take the necessary actions to carry out the terms of such stipulation of settlement. Mr. Esposito, is it contingent upon?
We're going to have, yes, contingent upon the receipt of the signatures of Francine and Joyce Stone.
So motion amended, consistent with what Mr. Esposito just said, contingent upon the signatures of the other signatories. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Are there any board questions at this time? And if not, are there any questions or comments from the public? Yes, ma'am. Just come up to the microphone and please state your name and address.
Sharon Furlong. I live in Feasterville, Trevose, Lower Southampton, but I come as spokesperson for the Bucks Environmental Action. I wanted to thank everybody who has been working in both the community and in the government to try to get the original plan jettisoned. And as you have commented, it is very true that this plan is different. However, as an environmental watchdog, I do have some questions about the conservation easement, and I'd like that placed into the record. I have several. I hope that's okay. So there are many different kinds of easements. There's riparian easements or wetland easements, there's a straight conservation easement, and there's an agricultural conservation easement. This easement throughout all of the 15 pages is referred to as a conservation easement as opposed to an agricultural easement. However, all of the activities that are going to be allowed match the requirements for an agricultural easement and not a conservation easement. So a conservation easement, straight conservation easement, is for the preservation of plants, trees, soil, wildlife, and the general area, where an agricultural conservation easement is there for the preservation of farmland and the soil of that farmland and the resources of that farmland and the lifeblood of that farmland. So all of the activities are agricultural in basis. So it is very different from a regular easement, and I was wondering why it was called a conservation easement, because agricultural easement allows a lot more activity than a conservation easement. So a conservation easement would not allow the butchering or the raising of animals on that land, and for those animals to be processed on that land and sold in a retail business in a building built on that land. But that is allowed in this easement. So again, why not agricultural easement? It's the same for crops. The foods that were actually being mentioned are all crops. They're domestic crops, and they're to be retailed. but there's no, and that's okay, but again, that's not allowed on regular conservation easement, only agricultural. So doesn't this need to be renamed? It also allows the cutting of timber, which is not allowed on conservation easements. The only timber that is to be logged on conservation easements is because usually the Forest Service on the federal level or the state comes in and says, we need to thin this out in order to preserve the health of the forest. That is not what's involved here, because commercial timbering would be allowed. I don't walk the grounds. I don't know if there's commercial timber, but it would be allowed. Again, that's agricultural easement, not conservation easement. And I have to wonder, why is this being called a conservation easement when it reads like an agricultural conservation easement? So this allows things to happen that should not be allowed to happen, and maybe that needs to be looked at a little bit more carefully as we go into the second, third, fourth generation of people who live in this community and people who live possibly on the grounds of those 67 in-holdings, 67 acres of 2 in-holdings, because that's what they'll be at that point. This agreement also allows for retail sales of these crops, cut timber, raised and processed domestic animals like sheep, goats, chickens, and cows. By the way, that sometimes becomes a problem when people move in, and in this case, it's going to be 124 homes for 55 plus, so we have elderly people moving in, and that might be a bit of a problem in terms of smells and stuff like that. That has happened in many communities in the nation before. So again, I just wanted to get that on the record, that that's a piece of what this is all about, and that there is the allowance on those 67 aggregate acres for there to be outbuildings to be created within that those 2 acres each. All right, again, in an in-holding. So is that going to be buildings like a farm stand that is more of a real store, a retail store? Is that what's going to happen? And if so, will the structures remain within the boundaries of these in-holdings, which is the 2 acres each, and the easement restrictions? Who will be monitoring, who will be policing what an agricultural easement creates and meets, which is that 50% of what's sold in a farm stand or a retail store within an easement, within that whole territory, 50% has to be raised and processed on that land in order to be sold as part of the easement. Who's going to be doing the policing and the monitoring of that? So my second question is everything going to meet the standards that has been set up within those 15 pages? Thank you. And who's going to police it?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I need you to put up that other thing that you had that had the development with the open space.
Nick, can you put up the development plan?
All right, can I borrow your thing?
If you can, just state your name and address for us, ma'am. Thanks.
Okay, my name is Mary Sly. I live in 197 Iron Rock Court. I want to borrow your little, okay. How do I get it to work?
It was working. You haven't pointed yet.
Okay. Where this is right here, this is where I live. Okay, right there. Okay, this little parcel right here of open space, I would like to put it on the record if I could to ask the developers, because I'm in the process right now of trying to take adverse possession, because when I bought my house, it was sold under false pretenses. I was told I owned that until about almost a year later, I found out I didn't own that. And I've been taking care of it for the past 13 years, mowing it. Whenever the trees, when the winds come and the storms come and the big branches come down, I'm the one who's paid thousands of dollars to have T&T Tree Service come out, chip it all, take care of it. And I have pictures of when I first moved in there, how people in Summit Trace were literally dumping whatever their yard waste was onto that property with the prior owner, and it was way over my head. It took me 2 years to clean it all up. So I want to ask, I want to request that, because I know nobody can actually own it. I mean, I paid my lawyer a lot, right? And I'm just a disabled vet on a fixed income. And I found out that nobody can actually own it. They can manage it because it's declared open space. Yeah, that little parcel there on that, yeah, I might have to show them again.
Do you have a pointer, Jim?
197 Iron Rock Court.
I think she's talking about this area.
Right here, right there.
Right in the corner.
Yeah, it's right in here. So 197 is right here. Yeah.
Summit Trace.
Right, right. Yeah.
Summit Trace open space.
Right. So when you get your homeowners association, if they can stay on that side of the fence for my little parcel, and we let us just use it as the backyard and just be at peace, I'm requesting that. You know, if there's any way we can do that. Another thing I wanted to bring up, I mean, it's nice to say not everybody's going to be happy. No, well, I mean, you see where I live, it's going to be boom right there. I watch George School when they have a lot of events, and I'm surprised they haven't came out here and set a peep. But when they unload, I mean, I watch buses go out of there, and it takes a long time for that traffic to go down. And they have big events throughout the year. So the traffic is going to be horrendous, and it's going to be. My house, when I moved into it, prior to me moving into it, there were 8 people living in that house. And now with a lot of immigration and people having not a lot of money, there's going to be a lot of people living in those houses, more than what is speculated. And people 55 and older don't just sit at home. I'm 72. And prior to my stroke, I was driving all the time. And a lot of the older people sitting in here will tell you the same thing. I don't sit at home. I make 5 to 7 trips a day, you know? So it's not true that old people, it's going to be a reduction in traffic. It's going to be gridlock, and and we know it. So, and one thing that on that little space that I was talking about, for years, people when they drive into Oak Ridge, when they come on Summit Trace Drive, they take their liquor bottles and they throw it out the window, because I watch them do it, and it lands right where I go around and pick it all up and clean it all up, and I've been doing it for 13 years. And I put it in recycle. My recycle people think I'm the biggest boozer in Middletown. But they know me better than that. They do. I got a good report, those people. And I do have certain things set up. I'm registered with the World Wildlife Fund, and also I have my whole backyard as a registered and certified wildlife habitat. I have it set up where birds can hide from the raptors, deer can come in and bed down at night, which they do. Because a lot of times when people were hunting on Stone Meadow Farm, the deer, I'd open my door and there'd be like 6 bucks standing in my backyard. And they'd say, oh, we're here, we just don't want to get shot, you know? But I can understand that. They know where to go. And so I have it set up where there's things for composting. I'm a Native American, I'm a Cherokee, and we believe what comes from the earth goes back to the earth. So I managed it that way, even though it looks a little cluttered, it's really well controlled. So, and so that is my big request, that you just all allow me to still manage it and take care of it. I'd be, more than grateful for that. And the other question I had is, who is gonna, like somebody brought up, who's gonna check on, is there 8 people living in a house, or is there only 55 and over? Is the homeowners association going to be doing that? That's going to be a full-time job, managing adults, especially people over 55. You all know that. And we're the worst population to manage. So it's something you got to look at, something that needs to be considered. Kids move back home, and they stay there, and they bring their kids. That's going to happen. Crime, the thing nobody wants to talk about, crime like it never happens. The people I know, I go to the VA in Philadelphia. I'm a veteran. I served 21 years, Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Desert Storm, Somalia, Bosnia. And, you know, whenever I go to the VA, they say, Miss Sly, give that 5 years, it's going to be just like Philadelphia, you know? So it's just all the things that the community needs to look at. And when you say not everybody is going to be satisfied, no, we got to live with it. So it's going to be hard. It really is. My neighbors are talking about moving. I say, no, don't jump ship yet. You know, we don't know how this is going to go. So, but now that they're going to get the green light, we don't know. But when you're dealing with a community, there is a lot of concern. And we don't hate you guys. We really don't hate you. A friend of mine asked to talk to a lady, and she said, that lady was so mean with me. She said, if you get on that property, we'll sue you to the fullest extent of the law. I said, don't worry. They asked about going over there with a metal detector because he lost his ring. I don't know what he was doing over there in the first place, but you know, I don't even go over there. That's for the farmers, you know, so I don't go over there. So, but that's my concerns. And another thing, when, like Tullytown, when they took the Levittown Shopping Center and they dug all that up, rats went everywhere. They went into Kenwood, Stony Brook, and over at St. Mike's and whatever. Well, now I have mice in my house now. I mean, I catch between 10 and 12 a week. You know, I have traps, yeah, because it's farmland. And when they come in the spring and they disrupt the land, boom, I get them. So I know when they start digging all that stuff up, boom, my neighbors are going to get a big surprise. But I've been dealing with it, and I got these electric traps, and I have 2 of them, and I leave them out there, and the feral cats come and haul them off and eat them. You know, because they're electrocuted, they're not poisoned. So, and that's why I don't disrupt the feral cats. I leave them alone, because they they get rid of these mice. They keep that population down. So if you see a lot of cats, don't shoot them. Please don't shoot them. All right. So but yeah, that's my concern. So.
Thank you.
Put that on record.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Eric Jacobs, 213 Cambridge Drive. I understand that the board is not considering a final land development plan now, but I also would like to bring up one issue with the sketch plan that I think if it waits until it comes before the board for final approval, it would be too late to make a change. And I think could make an improvement to the community. Specifically, I think the plan could be improved if one of the roads connecting to Route 413 on the west side, shown on the plan, would be replaced with a road connecting to Tollgate Road on the south side. Now, I know this was considered and rejected in the original developer's plan for the single-family homes. There were technical and reasons and PennDOT reasons for that, and I wasn't heavily involved then. But this is a very different plan now, and I think it deserves to be reconsidered. And having attended this board and the Planning Commission board, it has not come up for discussion, so that's why I wanted to surface this and basically ask the board to work with the developer to see whether this is a viable alternative. understand that the developer would not be eager to make such a change. I understand that the roadways were approved by PennDOT for the original plan, and it's a lot of time and money to rework any of that. So I understand the developers would not be eager to make a change, but that's not a reason not to consider it if it could make the plan better. There's only one chance to improve this plan and make it the best it can be for now and for the future. So here's the issue. We all know the issues with traffic on 413, and this development will add to them. There's nothing that can be done to completely prevent that if you're going to have a community like that. Currently, between the light at St. Mary's and the light at the bypass, which is exactly 1 mile, there are 5 roads which intersect with Route 413, not counting the ones for the George School. And the sketch plan shows the addition of 2 more roadways. By replacing one of those roads with the road at the bottom on Tollgate Road, it would lessen the impact of having so many entry points onto 413. I live in Sturbridge, just south of here. It can already be quite difficult pulling onto 413, and I know the board has heard from many residents over the course of these meetings about concerns of traffic on 413. Having a road on Tollgate, one of the roads on Tollgate would do 2 things, in my opinion, to improve the current plan. Some of the traffic exiting from the new development could turn left onto Tollgate and head east to hit Woodbourne Road to go north or south rather than going onto 413. It's probably a small percentage of the total traffic, but it would be some less traffic onto 413. For those who are headed to 413 and would use that road off Tollgate, they would be using an existing intersection with Tollgate Road and 413 instead of creating another road where the spacing of cars coming into all 7 roads along that mile will make it very difficult at times for people getting in and out. Finally, I understand that PennDOT has regulation that you can't have a cut-through in a new development. And so you can't, which a road down there could cut through to 413, but I believe that can be solved. There are other roads in the township which are marked as local traffic only or restrictions for local traffic and could make it so that it is not a cut-through road. I'm not well versed in PennDOT rules, but I believe that there's a possibility to do that. So again, all I'm asking is for the board to direct the township engineer and the developer to consider removing one access road on 413 and replacing it on the south end by probably continuing that road straight down. I realize it would require some tweaking of the plan, which has been tweaked multiple times already with the homes at the bottom, but probably with minimal disruption to the overall plan. I believe such a change would help at least a little to mitigate the impact of the additional traffic on 413 coming from the development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Hi, I wasn't planning on speaking here, but I noticed something on the plan that I think may be an oversight. Preserving the land and having open spaces and trails is truly commendable, and I really applaud you on that. But it is only good if the entire Middletown community can utilize that open land and those trails. I presume that they were not meant for only the property owners. So I'm Charles Alfonso from Laurel Oaks. If I drive to Meadowbrook, to the farm, and want to use the trails, where do I park? Do I park on somebody's driveway? That'll make them happy. Or do I park on the street? That will make them happy also. So I don't see any off-street parking for the Middletown residents to be able to use that open land that's being preserved. And in the interest of brevity, I'm done. Thank you.
I'll just address that real quick. It actually has a connecting trail to Court Creek Park, which everyone can obviously park at Court Creek Park, and then the trails connect over into the Stone Farm.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. Florence Wharton, 301 North Bellevue Avenue, Langhorne. I have two questions. Dealing with the conservation easement, there's two building envelopes that, from what I've studied in the plan, were not fully surveyed. In other words, the survey is not included with the legal document. So there's no meets and bounds as part of this agreement. And will that be done? Or otherwise, the actual boundaries are not to be claimed. If in fact they are for owners, what will the township require as far as stormwater management? Should these properties be developed by those owners, there will be stormwater runoff, and there will also be impervious surface. Now, if in fact they're not surveyed and recorded in the easement, that impervious surface, those driveways could be extensive. And that's one of my questions. The second and last is, who's going to be the holder of this easement? Is it the county alone, or is it the county and the township? Because there will be a legal responsibility to oversee it for the future. There's rules regarding that as far as the allowable, the permitted uses. Timber harvesting is not in a conservation easement, and those types of activities. So I just wanted to bring those questions up for your review. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Esposito, can you comment on some of those?
So as far as the conservation easement, the township is not a holder. It is just the county themselves. And when the owners do go to build the properties on there, they still have to come into the township to obtain any building permits, and we will be able to review building code and stormwater management code at that time.
Thank you. Any other public comment or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I already spoke, but I have a question for you.
Could just, ma'am, I need you to come to the microphone because, yeah.
I'm so used to being able to project, I don't even think of it. Thank you very much for...
Can't hear you without the microphone.
Thank you very much for allowing me to do this. I just have a quick question for you. You talked about, to this gentleman's really good point about off-street parking for folks who want to use this western end set of trails. You said there's parking in Cork Creek, but Cork Creek isn't remotely close to that part of 413. So if you are saying people can park at Cork Creek, that's all the way on the other side of this property. So how does that help a person maybe of my age, or someone even older, or someone with little kids? How are they going to do it? Because if I'm not mistaken, that's at least a half a mile before you get to the public trails. So that was my question. So what are we referring to when you say Cork Creek parking? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Just if you're looking for an answer to your question, this is not designed to be a destination park where we're going to have a parking lot for people to come and park and walk the trails. The idea is to have continuous connectivity from these trails through the development into Cork Creek Park. The trails are...
If I may, real quick, Mr. Kizak, so Paul Capera, Park and Rec Director, so we're involved with some trail work right here. The idea that you drive to a trail is commendable. If you want to drive and do this specific trail, then Cork Creek is the option. For example, right up the street across from St. Mary's, there's a very nice trail around their complex up there. You can go there, you can park. You can also walk into Cork Creek and then walk into Cork Creek here if you're looking for several miles. If you're looking for just a quick walk, this is a little bit out of the way, but you have St. Mary's, the rehab center right there as well. So you have Cork Creek, you have the path, you have Pennswood Village, and you have this all in the same area. Cork Creek is good, or the St. Mary's is great, because the St. Mary's Rehab Center with their big walking path is square in shape, and you have easy access. No, you could drive into the St. Mary's Rehab and then do the walk right there, which is very close in proximity to this area. Sure, sure. We do walks all the time there. And then if we cross when we want to, we cross 413. We can also go into Cork Creek Park.
I think the point is there are a vast number of opportunities currently in the township to walk. If you want to go for a walk, if you want to recreate, there are a number of places that you can do that already. This.
Excuse me, that's the wrong answer. I'm a Middletown taxpayer, and I am entitled to use every single facility that Middletown has for my benefit.
Certainly.
I pay taxes here.
You can use this.
That's the wrong answer.
You can use this.
To send me to park someplace else.
You don't have to park someplace else. You can park in Cork Creek Park.
That's what you said.
No, but I said it.
This lady said it is extremely inconvenient. And you have to cross toll road also.
Okay, well,
We're over.
we're not putting a parking lot at this particular park, so I'm sorry you find it inconvenient, but that is the option under this plan. Is there any other public comment or questions? Yes, Mr. Miller.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Miller with Save Stone Meadows Farm. First off, I'd just like to say thank you for the kind words that you guys gave tonight. I appreciate acknowledging the leaps and strides that we've made throughout the entire process. I know that it's not over yet necessarily, obviously listening to public comment and so forth. And there's obviously certain concerns from a lot of people. And the way I see it is every solution presents itself with new problems, So no matter what solutions we have, there's certainly always going to be problems associated with that. I liken this to the modern day David and Goliath. We started here nearly 5 years ago fighting the giant Goliath, which is a developer, and we're just a bunch of citizens coming out concerned about a giant development going in. And certainly the traffic issues, presenting where do we park? I marry Sly with, what am I doing with my properties? I think in the end, there's a stipulation of settlement that I signed off on just Friday. And what that outlines is a bunch of things that throughout the last 5 years, it's all the feedback, all the citizens' concerns, the developers' concerns, their demands, their needs, the Stone family primarily. I mean, let's face it, it's their property until it went under contract. But, we were never really the ones always holding the cards. None of us here. So, I am proud of the fact that collectively we've been able to work through a process that was tumultuous at times, very difficult, but everybody pitched in, whether it's you guys up there on the board, Jim Esposito, the developer, everybody stepped up to the plate. Everybody listened, compromised, and certainly the biggest compromising people here is the citizens of Middletown Township, us, the taxpayers, because we are relinquishing something that is very dear to us, which is land, but that's also dear to the Stone family, who is the owner of 168 acres of property. But now it's been finalized to a large extent. Nothing's done. Except for we are at the finish line. We're at the goal line. And we have a stipulation settlement. Like I said, me and Linda signed off on it. We have the conservation easement, which is really an agricultural easement, going back to Sharon Furlong. And that presents itself with issues too. But unfortunately, we were not a party to any of that. Middletown Township wasn't. Save Stone Meadows Farm wasn't. That was drawn up by the county, the Stone family, and I don't know that you had a whole lot to do with it. So it's very complicated. So for 5 parties to come together and sign on the dotted line is a tremendous feat. So for that, I thank everybody in this room, and especially everybody out here. And your concerns, sir, you're absolutely, you're right about, you're the taxpayer. But I think, I went out there with the developer, Linda Mead. We wanted trails to go through there. That property is not owned by us as taxpayers. It's actually an HOA, but they're giving us the rights to be able to just walk through that property if we so choose. That's the difference. It's not like it's parkland. And these are things that, as a citizen, I'm learning along the way. I don't know the answers to these things. But nonetheless, there again, I don't want to be long-winded. I already am. Thank you. Good night.
Is there any other public comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Frances Kraus. I was just wondering if you could tell me the name of the builder who's going to do the construction. Say it again. Fox Lane Homes. Fox Lane? Yep. Thank you.
For the folks at home, it's Fox Lane Homes. Is there any other public comment? Yes.
This has nothing to do with the development, but where I live.
Hold on, just one second. This is public comment on this specific agenda item, so if it's unrelated to the development, then this would not be the appropriate time for the comment. But if it has to do with the Stone Farm development or the settlement of...
Oh, no, but it is very important.
Okay. Well, we can certainly talk afterward if you want to talk to any of us privately.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
we'll do that then. All
Is there
right.
any other public comment on this agenda item? If not, there is a motion and the second on the table. All those in favor of approving the stipulation of settlement, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have our Q1 2022 financial report, and for that we have our Finance Director, Ms. Bhandari.
Good evening. I hope you all are doing well. I'm going to try my best to not take very long since the meeting's going a little late already. As mentioned, my name is Megha Bhandari, and I'm the Finance Director here at the Township. I will be giving you a brief overview of our Q1 2022 revenue and expenses compared to our budget and compared to Q1 2021. Actuals, a brief overview of our investment fund, and last but not least, a update on our pension plan. Okay, so as of now, we are actually on our target to budget overall and are actually doing slightly better than our Q1 2021 actuals this year versus last year. We are currently at 17% of our revenue target and about 16% of our expense target, which means our incoming revenue is actually over our expenses, which is great to see. Our Q1 2022 actuals versus Q1 2021 actuals for revenue are actually coming in at about $100,000 better than last year and over $140,000 on the expense side better. So overall, we are off to a great start compared to our 2022 budget and our actuals for 2021. I'll be going into more detail on our revenue and on our expenses for Q1 versus 2022 and 2021 in the upcoming slides, specifically related to the general fund and the capital fund. So our general fund is our primary operating fund for day-to-day expenses and revenues. So it's usually our focus during the planning and budgeting process. Overall, we are at 18% on the revenue side and 20% on the expense side. Normally, we would see that as an issue since our revenue currently is under our expenses, but in reality, for Q1, this is actually great and pretty normal overall. Our revenues come in a certain flow throughout the year, while as our expenses are more fixed, especially salary and wages and other normal operating costs. So if you actually compare Q1 2021, that actually puts it into perspective. We're actually $800,000 higher in revenue compared to last year, Q1 2021, and are doing $158,000 less on expenses compared to last year. So we're doing a lot better. As far as revenue is concerned, our earned income tax is actually doing quite a bit better. We're still seeing a trailing effect of the work from home situation post-COVID, where many commuters were working from home, which was giving us more revenue internally in Middletown Township versus going to the city. Another piece of the revenue that we're getting in is the real estate transfer taxes. There's quite a bit more transfers coming in still with the real estate market booming. And last but not least, our township services, our permits, inspection, and other services are doing far better than the average. We're seeing a lot more constructions coming in, which has increased our revenue. As far as expenditures, as I mentioned earlier, salary and wages are fixed and have increased overall, but our department heads make it a point to find the best and most efficient and effective solutions from an operating cost perspective. So in turn, that's helped in increasing our overall operating costs year over year. You can go on the capital. Thank you. Our capital fund is a fund that we utilize for capital activities, including projects and other activities. And we usually receive grant funding for reimbursement. So far, we have received about 5% of our revenue and about 10% in expenses compared to budget. Our revenue this year consists mostly of a transfer from the general fund as well as some RDA grant money that we're planning on receiving. This fund doesn't normally have any fixed revenue sources, so it relies heavily on grants, fund transfers, and sometimes bonds. So this year we're actually utilizing a bond that we had completed in 2020, where we still have quite a bit of money left over, and some funding that we're receiving from the RDA grant. We have not done our transfer as of yet into this fund from the general fund. That's something we look to at the end of the year after we've seen how much spending has incurred and whether or not we need to actually make that transfer. As you can see on the expense side, we've started quite a few projects, but we still have quite a few more to go. I'll be updating you throughout the year with more of the projects that are coming in as we go. But for now, these are the projects we have in place so far. Okay. Thanks. As far as our investment fund, this fund is actually a fund that we have for that we've invested into from our water and sewer plant sale. Unfortunately, we're seeing a bit of a loss in the balance as of now, and it's mostly due to the market conditions, as many of us have seen. Interest rates are going up, but what that has done is shown a sharp rise in yields, which has negatively impacted the market value of all of our portfolio. We're hoping that as interest rates stabilize, the market value will get better and we'll see a more stable growth in our investments overall. PFM is continuously monitoring this and looking for the best solutions for us. On a positive note, our Univest money market actually has increased from a 0.25% interest rate to 0.50 interest rate, which is at least somewhat of a better trend. So we are seeing a little bit more money coming through on that end. Okay, last but not least is our pension update. So we have employee pension plans here at the township. Again, same trend as in our investment side. Unfortunately, we're seeing a bit of a loss just because of market value as interest rates rise. Right now, we're seeing a negative 4.4% decrease. I do want to point out on the uniform side that we did have some extra cash in our account. So we moved $1 million over to our investment funds. This represents just the investment side of our pension plan. It doesn't include the cash side, so it's not our full account balance. And as I mentioned, we had access cash, so we moved that over to the investment fund. So our ending balance is a little bit higher than that negative 4.4% that you're seeing on here. So it doesn't calculate correctly, but that's actually what it is. I just wanted to point that out. So we're hoping that as interest rates rise, as I mentioned before, and things stabilize, that this trend will get better and we'll see a little bit more of gains in the near future. This is temporary, as we know. I mean, we're hoping that, it gets better with time. Well, that wraps up our Q1 2022 financials and pension update. Before I conclude, are there any questions from anyone?
Well, I think probably the performance of the pension funds and the investments is not unexpected, but it's certainly always good to get good financial news from a revenue and expenditure standpoint. Do any board members have any questions for Ms. Bendari?
Do we see, given those results, do we see any negative impact to our overall budget for full year '22?
I think that right now they're still looking at the trends and we're hoping that with interest rates rising, the yields will change. So at this point, there's not a full update on where that's going. As far as revenue expenses, I think overall 2022 is looking good, and that I think we're going to stay with that trend. But from the investment side, it's hard to say at the moment. Interest rates are just starting to rise, so it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of see where things go.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Bendari.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Next on the agenda, we have consideration of purchasing meeting room dais furniture from Paul Downs Cabinet Makers. Ms. Tealy-Cools?
Good evening. A project that has been in the works for several years and was included in the 2022 budget is an update of our public meeting room. As you can see, looking around you, it has been many years since there's been an update to the public meeting room. The goal at budget time was that we would modernize the dais furniture as well as update the technology. The primary goal to be able to operate in this new hybrid and Zoom meeting world. So there are a number of different contracts that I'm going to be bringing to you over the next month or so. This gives you shows you a rendering of what we're hoping the room will look like. Obviously, it's still going to be 2 stories here. We're not chopping off to create a ceiling as depicted there. But we're going to do a combination of in-house labor as well as several contracts. The first contract that I'm bringing to you tonight is for the furnishings for on the dais. So the proposal is to expand this stage out this way and widen it to install custom-made Diaz for the Board of Supervisors and 2 desks that will be on the stage with the board. There'll be a new lectern that matches this, and everything will provide for a seamless technology for meetings. So the Board of Supervisors will have at their spots the ability of what is on the screen will be at your spots. We're hoping to do new carpeting as well as new chairs. And one of the things that the Public Works Department is going to be doing for us is sort of an accent column behind the dais with the township logo on it. So it's a big project. We budgeted $100,000 for this project. I'm confident we're going to be able to keep the project under budget, within budget. So tonight what I'm bringing to you is a purchase from a actually local Montgomery County vendor. It's Paul Downs Cabinet Makers. They provide meeting room furnishings for all levels of government, and the client list is extensive, going all the way from different branches of the military, universities, other cities. And what we're looking at is obviously trying to stay with the modern feel of this meeting room, but incorporating some wood and wood veneers with laminate for a curved desk, which would be where it would be for either 5 or 7 people. We have 7 people in the Planning Commission, so it would accommodate the use that we have right now, and the 2 desks as well as the lectern. So The overall contract is for $51,825. So obviously, that's a big price tag, and just wanted to make sure that the board is understanding. We did research to get a sense of what our other options were. There are 2 other vendors that were actually more money than Paul Downs. You're getting truly a custom piece of furniture, and this is something that will last, easily for the next 50 years in this public meeting room. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I guess just the last thing I will say is we'll have the technology contract. We'll have a carpeting contract. We hope to actually, after the board's meeting in June, we would close the meeting room down, and that is when we would come in, take everything out. Public Works would extend this stage and do the work that they're doing to coordinate. We'll hopefully hold the July meeting upstairs, and we would then come back down here, crossing our fingers with the supply chain, that we would come back down here for our August meeting or September at the latest. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has.
Well, I know that this is something that's been in the works for several years that the board has been considering, and it's, in my mind, something that's, I think, overdue. It's been a long time since this room has been updated from an aesthetic standpoint, certainly, and I think it's important to bring our meeting room in line with what neighboring municipalities have for their public meeting spaces in terms of a more permanent structure, and so I think that's all great, and I think more importantly, bringing us into the modern age from a technology standpoint is not even optional at this point. I think it's something we have to do, not just to prepare for something as catastrophic as what we all dealt with in 2020, but for what we're all seeing is the trend moving forward, and that is meetings that are held virtually simultaneously with the in-person meetings, and allows residents to participate virtually, allows consultants and developers and attorneys and anybody else presenting to the board to participate virtually. And so I think updating the technology is something we certainly have to do, and again, is also something that all of our neighboring municipalities are endeavoring to do, again, because at this point, it's not really optional for a local government. So I think this is great, and I think the design that Paul Downs put together is really nice, and consistent with the feel with the room currently, but also modernizing things a bit. So I don't have any questions. Do any other board members have questions for Ms. Teoli-Cools about this? If not, I can accept a motion.
I move to approve a contract with Paul Downs Cabinet Makers of Bridgeport, Pennsylvania in the amount of $51,825.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Corporal. There's been a motion and a second. Are there any board questions? Are there any questions from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Teoli-Cools. Next on the agenda, we have consideration of authorizing the purchase of Palo Alto Firewall PA 450 redundant firewalls. Yes, Mr. McGee.
Yes, good evening. Currently, our Cisco firewall is on the end of life list, so I cannot renew the warranty on it. And firewall is like our first major defense to protect our network. So after doing research and everything, Palo Alto, the 450, will fit our needs and will give me the ability to actually run reports, have it up live, and see exactly what's going on per, like, what particular users are doing. It would actually benefit us and help me determine even more where our weak spots are. Because, this criminal cybersecurity that, going on, ransomware, local governments is literally a target. One just recently happened, which I don't think I can mention the name of the town, but it was close by. I've mentioned one in the agenda here from Delaware County. So I am So currently, I did budget 13 grand for the firewall. They offered me pretty much, it was actually a great deal for 2 firewalls to make it redundant. So just in case if one went down, we are still up and running. And the cost justification, because we were, I did ask for additional server this year, but since we are moving to Office 365 and the importance of having a redundant firewall, I'll probably scratch off that. I'm going to scratch off purchasing that server for $20,000. And so the total cost, which I'm blind, is $21,280 from PrismWorks, which they are a CoStar vendor, and that includes support and setup cost and warrant for 3 years.
So the original budgeted amount was $13,000.
Yeah.
Now looking at $21,280. However, we are not now purchasing the additional server, which we had budgeted $20,000 for. So
that is correct.
Got it. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, and this includes 3-year support?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. And so additionally, Office 365 really is gonna move a lot of our stuff up into the cloud. That's going to free up a lot of space on the server. The only reason why I wanted an additional server was because when I need to take down one server, I can't have all the other virtual servers running on that one. They can, but it's really slow, and so I have to shut off a bunch of servers. So it's kind of looking at a way where I can keep everything up and running and get the main server all up to date. But I think this is more important than that, so that's why I am going in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, cybersecurity is a significant concern, and firewalls certainly are vital to stopping those types of attacks.
Correct.
So I think this is important. So I'll move to authorize the purchase of Palo Alto Firewall PA450 through PrismWorks Technology in an amount not to exceed $21,280. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Next, Ms. Payne, there's been a motion and a second. Are there any board questions at this time? Are there any questions from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. It passes 5-0. Next on the agenda, we have a discussion of the US Route 1 project. And this will be the second time that the board is opening a discussion on this topic. And so what I'll ask is Ms. Tioli-Cools is going to just provide some information to remind everybody what it is we are talking about.
Sure, thank you. So just as a follow-up, I'm going to just very briefly go through the slideshow. Last month, we discussed the US Route 1 project. It's section RC3, which is the 4th section in the overall Route 1 project. The purpose of the project is to modernize the roadway for safety and efficiency in travel, matching current design criteria. You saw the project limits were just up there. PennDOT is strongly encouraging public feedback. There is a project website. We have this linked on our website. It's currently preliminary design phase with construction anticipated in 2026. PennDOT has shared with us that they are attempting to contact and interact with residents as much as possible. They have interacted with 90 different individuals. They are asking for feedback from individual municipalities. We talked at our last meeting about some of our neighbors having provided impact and provided feedback and requests for mitigation efforts. PennDOT has told us that they will be holding a public plans display meeting. They did say May, although now we're getting pretty close to May, but definitely this spring. Many of you will recall they have had multiple public plans display here in the Township building. This just shows you the overview of the project. When completed, there will be only 2 interchanges on this section of Route 1, one near the high school and one near Maple Avenue. This shows you what it looks like right now with the concrete islands and the access roads. This next slide shows you the proposal to remove concrete islands, to have 2 12-foot travel lanes in each direction with a 6-foot shoulder and a center concrete barrier, 14-foot paved shoulders on the outer lanes. This up in the air right now is whether or not there will be a sound wall. Something that is up for discussion and feedback that they are requesting is related to the access roads becoming pedestrian and bicycle trails. Where access roads, there will be portions where the access roads do remain, and there will be an 8-foot paved shoulder for pedestrian and bicycles. So if the decision is made that the access roads are converted to pedestrian and bicycle paths, there will be linkages for those pedestrians and bicycles on the portions where the access road will remain open. Now, this shows you the northbound ramp at Highland with a roundabout. You'll recall that this is the section that is still in flux. And, you know, we had to put a couple of X's through an old design. It originally included a ramp and a roundabout. They've been removed because of the school, you know, issues with the school. Sidebar from our last meeting, I am invited to a meeting with PennDOT and the school district to talk about the project's impact on the school district coming up in a couple of weeks. The next slide shows you some of the frontage roads where there will be sections that are remaining open for access and circulation. Very hard to see on this slide, but the cross-hatched areas will remain. Again, that's just continuing to move down to the last slide, which shows you the partial cloverleaf design, which has 2 signalized intersections with through lanes. The light blue on here depicts a 12-foot wide path for pedestrians and bicycles. It will link existing sidewalk just off this plan. At the bottom are the library and other train station items to connect to. The Bellevue Highland roundabout in place of the blinking light. And so that's just sort of the high level. And the final slide for the board is next steps and discussion points. So I'll turn it back over to you, Chairperson Kizak.
Thank you. So it seems to me there's a couple of things that PennDOT is looking for from us. First and foremost is they're looking for a statement of support generally for the project. And then they're looking for input from us, specific mitigation requests. And so we have to consider what, if any, requests we want to make. And one of the big topics, which is up there, the second bullet point, discusses the conversion of these access roads to pedestrian bicycle paths, which is something that's under discussion. So I wanted to open it up so that we can certainly have, if members of the public want to ask questions or provide feedback. I think the one thing the board is looking for is, and is always looking for, frankly, is more public input and more public feedback. And so we don't necessarily have to resolve everything tonight. We are hopeful that this meeting, that this plan display that we're told will happen in this room will take place soon. May was when we were initially told, and so that will be a great opportunity for the public to come and review the plans and provide feedback. But I think, at least for tonight's purposes, it would be good to see if there is consensus on the board to generally support the project, and see what the feeling of the board is on conversion of the access roads to pedestrian bicycle paths. And I want to We have Mr. Phil Wurst, our traffic engineer, who kindly came tonight, and I'd like to, I always put you on the spot, Phil, but I would like you to just, if you could, talk about the traffic studies that have been done, traffic concerns. One of the big ones that I think a lot of us have heard a lot from residents and also members of neighboring municipalities concerns the impact specifically on Maple Avenue and Route 413 as the result of the elimination of these access roads and bringing this down to just 2 points of access at Neshaminy High School and Flowers Mill. So if you could just talk about that information and share what you know with the board.
Sure. First, there will be access at 413 as well. So you have the Neshaminy High School access, 413, and Flowers Mill down at Maple. So, and I hope I'm not speaking in circles with regard to that, but you know, we've enjoyed, Middletown has enjoyed a good, real history of partnership with PennDOT on the project at Woodburn along, and Langhorne Yardley and Bridgetown Pike. We get along very well with PennDOT, and they're very supportive of all the actions that you've taken to enhance transportation on not only on your own network, but on PennDOT's roadway network. So, you know, I think they look at us as partners, and they take very seriously anything that we have to say with regard to design changes or to look harder at something. They will do it. They've done numerous studies, many studies regarding the traffic impact as well as environmental impact. The noise walls is an example. The frontage roads have been an example as well. Frankly, the whole corridor has to be modernized. It's an old 1960s, 70s design that needs to be upgraded for today's vehicles and access and speeds and so forth. So PennDOT's well on their way of moving to our section. Once they get to our section, it's going to look like a different type of highway. So the access roads are going to be used, as Ms. Tealy-Cool said, for some access points as well as for pedestrian pathways. Those and the noise walls are still under consideration as far as design tweaks, which we will have an impact on with regard to that. Our priority, one of our big priorities is pedestrian mobility, which PennDOT is all on board with, providing a walking trail across 413 and pedestrian impacts at traffic signals, and lastly, the frontage roads. The extent of which and how they work and how we connect is still a design issue that has to be gone through by PennDOT. So the township, PennDOT's engineers will all be involved with that process. So rest assured, anything that comes up that you're thinking about today that you might have a question about can and will be answered by PennDOT and likely be resolved in a positive way.
Sorry, if I could just briefly interrupt you. So just, if you can, just reemphasize or clarify what you just said as to what is still in consideration or unresolved that the board has an opportunity to influence at this point.
Well, I think right now the best way to have opportunity with PennDOT through this long process, and it's going to be a longer process, is by support of the project. So the outstanding things are, what are your priorities? Is it going to be pedestrian access? Is it going to be putting noise walls up? I've heard at the last meeting that some people didn't want noise walls. So it's really a prioritization of what you'd like to see. The road is going to be the road. There's going to be an access at 413, a new interchange. That's going to be the biggest improvement to the whole area. It's going to reduce congestion at our 213 interchange and on South Flowers Mills Road. So it's great for Middletown. I don't have any specific areas other than pedestrian mobility and ensuring the safe quality of life issues that you'd like to see in place for the township. I don't see anything that I could recommend that PennDOT and we as the township traffic engineers and the township staff are looking at right now as far as any other improvements. You know, other municipalities have said, well, we want this, we want that. We really can't think of anything. I mean, we have a contained area. We're doing pretty well with regard to what PennDOT is providing, and they're open to any suggestions that we might have to improve that. So we're looking at, again, the pedestrian mobility, opening that up for residents to be able to get around town better, get across Route 1 in a fashion that makes both sides of the, you know, you could get to each side of the township without having to, you know, trouble yourself. And so that's really it. And we're doing it all. So I hate not to say you target this or target that, or we really got to hit PennDOT over the head with this or that. I don't say it right now. I think we've done a good job so far, and I think with everything that we do with the town, with PennDOT, is really worked out well for us.
Thank you, Mr. Worcester. Do any board members have questions for Mr. Worcester or Ms. Teely-Cools, or have comments generally they want to offer about this project?
I know that some of the neighboring townships or municipalities are concerned about the traffic in their little areas. So has there been a traffic study done to show how taking away the access roads will impact those areas like Langhorne Manor and, you know, the center of town and things like that? Because it's not Middletown, but it's obviously, we're driving through it. If you're in Middletown, you're driving through those areas.
Yeah, they have. I mean, historically, the access roads are traffic accident problems. So they're trying to eliminate those types of roads based upon essentially what you have is an interstate highway, which it's not an interstate highway, I should be clear, but it's like an interstate highway, restricted access onto for Route 1. So it's kind of a tenet of traffic engineering and highway work that you kind of want to remove those types of frontage roads anymore because they cause problems where high-speed traffic should not be involved with lower-speed traffic on a frontage road. So taking away those frontage roads does impact access for other communities, not as much as Middletown, other than, like you said, Ms. Corporal, that they will, you know, Middletown people will drive on those roads. But it makes it more, I guess the word is, it's more uniform with regard to how they're treating this road, so it's treated like every other interchange on Route 1. So we're not gonna, you're gonna come from the turnpike and be able to travel on the same type of road with the same type of interchanges and access points, rather than having something that is pretty foreign to most people that are not from the area regarding these access roads and how to get here and how to get there. If you're not from the area, you're going to be, you could be in trouble how you get like along 413. It's a discontinuous route right now, and now they're connecting it. So they're the types of things that make it better. But again, we have some time to influence the access road portions that are within Middletown Township and their relationship to it, and we'll continue to do that.
Of having, I think it's really important to have the access roads convert them into pedestrian and bicycle trails. I think that's something that we had talked about during the planning session, you know, and that was a big thing, trying to get as many trails as we can. So obviously that's something that would be really good for Middletown. I just wanted to know how, if at all, the access roads, taking them away, would affect the local traffic.
Well, if that's how you feel, then that should be part of maybe a letter that we send to PennDOT saying that we encourage the changeover from the access roads to pedestrian, bicycle, non-motorized paths. So that wouldn't be a bad thing. I know PennDOT's trying to do that, but they're running into issues they have localized access issues that they just don't know how to handle just yet. But certainly we could pass that along, or preferably a letter of support with those types of things in it would be helpful.
Does any other board members have questions for traffic engineer, Mr. Worsta?
I have a question. When would they like the feedback from the community? When is that presentation? Is that May?
Well, they're looking for community input right now through their website. We will highly publicize the plans display when we hear from them on that. They'll hold it here. They typically hold the meeting here.
Thank you.
I know it was a couple weeks ago when we had the first kind of review. Did we hear from any residents after that?
I did not, no.
All right, well, there are some residents here, and at least one has their hand up. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask any questions or provide any feedback on the Route 1 project.
Hello, my name is Frances Kraus. I think that the side roads, service roads, for lack of a better term, are better served than bicycle paths and things of that nature. In my opinion, what you have there is 2 lanes now. We all know that the traffic going up and down there travels at a high rate of speed. So what you're going to do now is open it up to 3 lanes of traffic going at a high rate of speed. Personally, I'm not going to ride a bicycle along that. To me, that's like riding a bicycle up on 95 or any other superhighway. I believe that the service roads are a great benefit to the residents as far as fire engines, emergency vehicles getting up and down there. By taking those service roads away, what you're doing is you've got 3 lanes of traffic going at high speeds, north and south, really not accomplishing anything but getting people through our little town at a faster rate of speed. By leaving those service roads, you're also leaving more people entering and exiting that thoroughfare, and no need for those Cloverleafs to dump all of that traffic into 413 and 213 intersection. So I think that the service roads are a great asset to the neighborhood, and should they be removed, I think there's going to be a lot of more congestion and a lot more hardship by taking them away. You know, people who want to ride their bikes and walk on paths, we have all our little towns to go through and do that. We have all the paths that we were just talking about, Court Creek Park and all of those places. I don't know that we need to add more of that and then take away from the emergency accessibility. Plus, when there's things going on at the high school and the traffic backs up going to the turnpike, you have parents that can get their children to band practice or whatever by going on those those side roads, those service roads. I think it's a disservice to get rid of them, in my opinion. Does anybody want to add anything to that? I mean, I would like to, dialogue on that if anybody.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comment. And I'd like to, Mr. Worster, there's a couple points that I would appreciate comment on. I mean, one certainly is this idea of you're losing rather than gaining access for residents. I think probably that pertains more to residents in municipalities other than Middletown, but still, it's a important point. I think another point is access for emergency vehicles was something that was made, is worthy of a discussion. And then again, coming back to this idea that the new design is going to increase congestion, because again, this is something that, to the extent we're hearing from residents, that seems to be a theme, again, more so in neighboring municipalities than maybe from Middletown residents, but this idea, particularly Langhorne Borough, there are residents there that are concerned that this is going to increase congestion in their municipality. So any response or feedback to any of those concerns?
Well, first I should point out that any pedestrian facilities that are put in, if it includes the reuse of the frontage roads, will be with procedures in place to protect pedestrians. So they'll be either far off the road or have a large berm or barrier between any traffic at all, well, completely. I would imagine that something similar that you could look at would be the new 202 bypass area in Parkway, with how the trail is further off and protected pretty much from traffic. It's a little bit different with Route 1 because it is a much bigger highway. But those pedestrian protections will be in place. I'll also point out that anything that PennDOT builds or maintains on the side of those roads with regard to maintaining, meaning are they going to maintain that infrastructure that's there, that will be built for emergency vehicle access. So you'll be able to get emergency vehicles onto the highway that way and off of the highway that way and along the path if there's any types of things there. So PennDOT's thought of that sort of thing. The issue of access to residents and including our other community, their brethren communities, is really one that PennDOT still has, because right now it doesn't show all the frontage roads being converted to pedestrian access roads or pedestrian trails or paths. It has access to the communities. And I think PennDOT is still dealing with that right now. So the best I could say with that is I'll keep you posted on the progress that they make with regard to how they feel that they should handle access to and from their highway and how the frontage roads come into play with that. But I concur with the issue of the emergency access and so forth. The other thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to keep general traffic and cut through and commuter traffic off of the local roadways, unless you want to be on those roadways. So there's no meandering around like we see in areas like South Flowers Mills Road that causes tremendous amount of congestion for us and that leaks out onto Lincoln Highway and to Route 1 or to Business Route 1, and it's just a really tough thing, and that might go away a lot of. And the more direct routes you have with traffic, the less you have filtering into neighborhoods. So that's kind of the tenet that we look at as far as that goes.
Thank you. Mr. Valla, I think you said there's somebody on Zoom with a comment.
Yes, a person with a screen name Brian. We're beginning moving you into the room now.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. I'm Brian Smiley, 120 East Marshall Avenue, Langhorne Borough. I'd like to make a few comments about some of the plan features and also ask a few questions. One element I'd like to highlight right now, though, is that PennDOT actually has a program called PennDOT Connects. And that program essentially is a mechanism to educate the public and public officials on projects that PennDOT undertakes, and that's to get public feedback. So one of the elements of PennDOT Connects is also to look at the comprehensive plans of the towns that are affected. And PennDOT Connects has been in place since 2016, which is basically projects that are funded prior to that were to be exempt. But there were significant redesigns that we consider, and I say we, talking about residents of Langhorne Borough, which I am a resident of, would benefit. And basically Middletown Township would also benefit from this program. So to the extent I'm hearing that there aren't a lot of public comments, it's perhaps because there hasn't been adequate education of the public and awareness of this project. So I would highly encourage Middletown to inquire further about the benefits and why PennDOT Connects is not being implemented for this project. Another question I would ask too about the bicycle paths along the access roads is, has there been a study of the effectiveness or the need for the bicycle paths to run basically from 413 to the high school? As we understand it, it's a loop path that basically just goes to the high school and loops back. Is there justification for travel along that corridor, or is it just a loop for exercise, which is great, but Middletown's comprehensive plan also talks about connectivity of sites, train stations to neighborhoods, connecting to Core Creek Park from other areas, not just the neighboring neighborhoods. So again, to reiterate, is there a need for this bike path? Although I'm certainly in favor of bike paths, I think it would be a much more effective use of taxpayer funds to connect to the train station. I see that there is a path that was added after residents had asked about the pedestrian connections, but really invest in further connections and continue with that and put a path on both sides of 413, not just on one side. Some of the other questions I have is the noise walls. I think Mr. Wursta or somebody else had mentioned if they're really necessary or effective. So I would ask that question too. I've read a lot of studies that noise walls are not that effective when you're talking about houses that are a block away. They may be effective for the houses that are right next to the noise wall itself, but those also bear the brunt of the aesthetics of a noise wall and the future graffiti that will come. So I ask Middletown to think carefully about what they're inviting with that and how they're going to spend that money effectively. One other thing I'd like to mention too, Mr. Wursta had mentioned that there is, there'll be reduced congestion at 213, and that's primarily because the traffic will be transferred to 413 and Maple Avenue and then funneled through Langhorne Borough. So I'd ask the residents and supervisors to think carefully about how that might affect the neighboring boroughs. People always think you should, want to treat others how you'd like to be treated. So essentially, by transferring traffic from one place to another borough doesn't seem fair at all. So I'd ask you to think about that and maybe work together with neighboring boroughs about how we can collectively push PennDOT to maybe consider other routes such as 295 and the Newtown bypass as a way to work around the borough and using roads that are currently designed for that speed and volume. So I'd ask Middletown if there really is a need at this point to endorse the plan, because as it was said, if the plan currently favors Middletown, there really is perhaps no reason to comment on the plan. Just see what comes of it, and try and work with some neighboring municipalities to see if we can create a better example. There are some alternatives that Langhorne Borough has put forth that would be very helpful, I think, if Middletown saw what those examples were, using traffic calming and pedestrian-oriented solutions. And it would be a great example as Middletown works to implement their comprehensive plan and essentially, create an example for Middletown to use on other pedestrian-oriented projects that they'd like to implement in the future. So thank you very much for your time. And look forward to working with you.
Thank you. So some of those comments, questions were almost sort of, I guess, rhetorical in nature, in the sense that they're, encouragement questions that we should be asking as we move forward with the process. But I disagree that there's not a need for Middletown to voice a position on the project generally at this point. I think we do. I think we owe that to our residents to take a position with PennDOT. I think that there's a lot of issues left still for discussion and things that can be debated and things that maybe the five of us have not yet resolved in our own minds and things that, PennDOT has not resolved in theirs. But at least from my perspective, the most important aspect to this whole thing is this is, without question, an outdated, dangerous road that needs to be updated for the safety of our residents, the safety of our township employees, emergency management personnel. And so the project, in my opinion, generally needs to go forward, and I think it's important that Middletown express a position on that. I would like to hear, there is this this great inconsistency that we keep coming back to, which is the gentleman from Langhorne Borough, as a resident of the borough, his feeling is that the project is going to funnel traffic into the borough and increase congestion in the borough. By the same token, we've heard differing viewpoints that, to the contrary, this is actually going to relieve congestion, and that the only people traveling through the borough are people that are intentionally traveling through the borough. They're not going to be using it as an access point or a cut-through point. That's difficult for us as township supervisors to reconcile. We're not traffic engineers ourselves. And so, again, this is an area where we're looking for input. Again, Mr. Worcester, I keep coming back to you. I don't know if you have thoughts on that one way or the other, and I'm not necessarily suggesting we have to resolve all these issues tonight. I think, though, that it's an issue that we're going to have to address head-on at some point.
Well, I don't have the studies with me, but I'll tell you that traffic ends up going, and you've heard it before because you've all been on one side or the other with this. It's like water, and it's going to go with the path of least resistance. That's kind of a cliche, but what's going to happen at 413 is people that want to get off at 413 are going to now be able to get off Route 1 at 413, and they're not going to have to meander around to get there. They're going to go there no matter what, whether it's going to 213 or Maple Avenue or any other way to get to 413. If they want to go to 413, they're going to get off at the 413 exit of US 1. That's what's going to happen. So PennDOT has put in place a couple things to help with that. They're putting in a roundabout to slow people down as they come all over from the new interchange past Woods. Then how you make the loop now and then the left onto 413. Well, that's going to be a roundabout now. That's going to slow people down as they go around the roundabout and into the borough. So traffic's going to get to where it wants to go, no matter what. And we're just giving people a better, safer alternative to do that. Is it going to increase the traffic? I don't know. I don't have the studies to prove or disprove that in front of me right now, but I do know that traffic that's destined for 413 and that part of the community is going to take that new bypass, and instead of going down to 213 and making a left and go down to down Maple to 413 and then make a left to go that way. That's what happens. Some of them go down South Flowers Mills Road, like I said. So that's not going to happen anymore, and I think that's a good thing. It relieves the congestion within our communities and keeps it on the main roads.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that resonates with me is I actually spoke to a lot of residents in Parkland last fall, and they did complain about the traffic coming off of that access road, speeding down their road to Poplar Firefighters Park. So I think there's going to be residents on both sides of it where they're going to be upset that they lose that access, but I think for the most part, it'll become safer, the roads that are off of that without that access point. And I just hear a lot of those residents in my head right now telling me those stories of cars speeding down their street.
We could probably go on and on about this for a really long time, and it's getting late. So what I would like to do at this point is call a motion to at least instruct our township manager to offer or at least communicate general support for the project to PennDOT on behalf of the Middletown Township Board of Supervisors. So if I were to make that motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So there's been a motion and a second to communicate general support for the Route 1 project to PennDOT. Are there any board questions? Are there any questions from the public? Yes, ma'am. Just state your name and address, please.
My name is Carol Zetterberg, and I live at 129 West Marshall Avenue. I'm with Langhorne Open Space, a Director of Funding and Development. And Langhorne Open Space is an organization of about 200 local families. About a third of our families, or fourth of our families, live in Middletown, and about a half of our families live in Langhorne boroughs. So we, the borough and the township are so close, so we're very combined. And I think, as many of you know, so many of the programs that happen either in Middletown or Langhorne Borough are attended by the people in the neighboring township or borough. This matter came up to Langhorne Borough rather belatedly, and I am interested in it not only in my present position, but also I was vice president at one time of Langhorne Borough Council and also chairman of the Planning Commission. So I'm interested from many different aspects and have followed it quite carefully. The person that you heard from Langhorne Borough actually is the chairman of our Planning Commission, and he has done a very careful study, so careful that sometimes my head spins when I try to listen to him, of all the different alternatives, and he's very carefully studied what is happening with the PennDOT plan. I have no problem with what PennDOT does or tries to do. I think probably Pennsylvania has the largest number of highways, the largest number of miles, I believe, in the United States of state highway. So it's got a huge job, and you can't help but appreciate what they have to do. In this case, it seems like there was seems to be a mistake, like a gap in information. For one thing, Langhorne officials did not find out about a meeting that very greatly is going to affect the borough. They simply were not notified of the meeting and are challenging this as being something, that there was no chance for Langhorne Borough to comment at the time of the meeting. And that is being challenged. So I guess what I'm urging tonight is that you don't come to a conclusion such as your chairman is urging you to do, and I respect you need to move things forward. I understand that. But I'm just hoping that you will wait a little longer. The families that Langhorne Open Space has that are in Middletown Township seem to be just discovering this. And we are hearing, we're just beginning to hear from them. What's going on? How can they be doing this? They attend, for instance, so many things. The car show that the Langhorne Auto Association, the Langhorne Business Association has. I think there were 300 cars one year. This is very popular with Middletown residents as well as Langhorne Borough. The Garden Club, Four Lanes End Garden Club, many members from Middletown Township in the Garden Club. It's not, they meet in Langhorne Borough, but it's really many different townships that belong. And, they have thousands of people come to that every year. This is going to make many of these activities, the flea market that's so popular at Langhorne Heritage Farm. It's hard to figure out how these people will get into and out of the borough. One of the things that is interesting that I've heard a former president of Langhorne Borough Council say at a recent meeting is that never in all of his experience, and he was president for 4 years, never had he seen an issue so unite the people. The people in Langhorne are 99% against this and fearful of what it will do, literally splitting the town in two. I'm not sure what studies you've seen. I've heard them quoted, And we have two different people who are traffic engineers who have made studies of this case. And the most recent one said, and even the previous one, who was a PennDOT engineer, admitted it would add traffic into that intersection of 413 and 213. If you cut off other accesses, you've got to increase that traffic, like you say, is going to flow. It's going to flow. And if there's only one road left for them to get in and out, they will take that road. One of your very respected organizations, Middletown Friends, the Quakers, who are located on the west side of town, are opposed to this and have written a letter to PennDOT saying that they are opposed to it for one reason, because it separates the part of town that serves those who go to the African Methodist Evangelical Lutheran Church from the rest of the town, basically from their members who live in the rest of the town. One of those members was killed crossing the highway that's there, just Pine Street or 413, was killed. And several of their members have been hurt and injured trying to get across to their church. The Baptist church is also right next door to the African Methodist Church, and it's been very hard on it also. So our only two black churches in town are being separated from the rest of the town. And that was one of the concerns of the Middletown Friends who wrote their letter to PennDOT. Another thing that's going to be split off from town is the library. And children will be having to cross the highway to get to the library. Children will be having to cross the highway to get to the playground. That whole part of town is going to be separated by more traffic. So I'm just saying.
Can I just interrupt? Because while you're here, and I value your experience and the role that you currently serve in. Because we hear this a lot, and so what you're saying is it's going to increase traffic and it's going to direct cars into the borough, and you're talking about your community being cut off from one another. I mean, can you explain to me why it is you believe that will happen? I mean, I understand that there's a strong sentiment in Langhorne Borough that this is a bad thing, but I guess what I'm searching for is, can you explain to me in engineering terms what this plan does to cut off one part of your community from the other, or why it is you believe that this will push more traffic into Langhorne Borough?
Okay, well, probably a person who could answer better than I perhaps might be Pat Carr, who's sitting behind me, and he's the president of Langhorne Open Space, which is a land trust. But in my understanding of it, and as I study the map, and I've been looking at it quite a bit, if you take 3 or 4 possible inroads or tributaries away, and you put it all into a main flow, well then you just end up with more river, or in this case, more traffic. Because if you're going to take away 4 ways that people could get into that part between the high school and Langhorne Borough, they only have one way left, and that is 413 and right past the African Methodist Church, which, by the way, its foundations are already in trouble because of those big trucks that go through. And they have a sidewalk right outside the church. Their sidewalk is about this, about this wide. And that's all that separates them from 413. So I appreciate what your expert has said here about PennDOT finding ways to make things more safe. And I think we agree that those, what do you call them? Those bars that are out there in the highway, the barriers, that those are not safe. They're outdated. They need to go. But you cannot create more traffic and somehow either get people and protect a building that is noted for being one of the oldest in America of the African Methodist Evangelical Church.
So can I just, so us moving ahead with this and giving, PennDOT hasn't made any decisions yet. They're still up in the air about the access roads in general and still looking at that. Is that correct?
They do have.
The motion that you just made was for general support of the project.
Exactly. So we're just making a motion for general support to move this forward. PennDOT has not, there's still discussion and open, they're still taking comments from the public about the access roads and the plan. I'm correcting this, correct? So we're just moving ahead with getting this moving. We're just giving our approval for moving ahead, not saying that they're going to take all the access roads, definitely. They're still looking at those things. So everybody, definitely Langhorne Manor and anybody who wants to are encouraged to be going to PennDOT with your comments and solutions.
Actually, we were told that the deadline was passed. We were not told that. We were told an opposite
Aren't they still
answer to that.
taking comments?
I can't. It's regrettable what you're saying about the lack of notice or participation that Langhorne Borough is afforded. And let me say unequivocally, we value tremendously our relationship with our neighboring municipalities, probably Langhorne Borough the most. We are interconnected, exactly as you say, and all of us spend time in your borough, and so we sympathize with you, and so please know we're not unconcerned about the impact to your community and all of the different community organizations that you mentioned. But I think Ms. Corporal is correct that at least what my motion intended to do was to communicate to PennDOT this board's support generally for the Route 1 improvement project, with the details, as we're all discussing, remaining to be considered and discussed. And to answer your question, I don't know what PennDOT's deadlines are or are not. I can only tell you that as of what we've been told, they're still soliciting and welcoming public input. They are still going to have these opportunities, these public plan displays for the public to come. And certainly they're still looking for feedback from us because we haven't given it to them yet.
I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and I feel that you're right. There is a close relationship between Middletown, who literally engulfs and surrounds almost Langhorne Borough. You have 50,000 people. We have 1,700 people. But in many ways, provide kind of a magnet type relationship with Middletown because the borough is so different, so tiny, so old, so historic, and has so many cultural organizations that find their homes there. So I'm not disagreeing with you, and I'm not saying that you're being rude or unkind. I'm begging you to give us another month thought on it before you send your letter of support. And I'll hand the podium over to.
I'm going to let this gentleman go first because he made his way up to the front. Yes, please, go ahead. State your name and address.
Okay, my name is Pat Carr. I think I've been given sort of an exaggerated introduction from Carol. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I can speak to a couple of points that you brought up. We feel, like Carol said, when you close off several access points, by its very nature, it's going to channel the traffic into the single one. We also believe there's this notion of imputed traffic, that when you improve and add cloverleafs and that sort of thing, it's going to become an easier way for people to funnel onto that route as opposed to the ones that you folks were describing kind of meander through neighborhoods. So in any event, we strongly believe there's going to be a lot more traffic coming up north on 413 into Langhorne Borough and parenthetically on into Middletown, where 413 is a disaster. You heard people talking about the Stone Meadow Farm thing earlier. It's just overburdened with traffic, and there's going to be much more even beyond the borough. And I would argue that you have Middletown citizens that are traveling through that horrible intersection in the center of Langhorne Borough, which will get worse. And then also the equally bad intersection down at 413 and Bridgetown Pike, as they head towards St. Mary's and the bypass. So anyway, that's our thought on that the traffic will definitely increase. And in fact, we hired a traffic engineer that disputed some of the PennDOT's figures about the traffic impacts in the borough and feels, in fact, it'll be much worse than they're predicting. Another point I wanted to make is that we are not opposed to the entire project, the citizens of Langhorne Borough. We totally endorse the safety improvements. Having curbs, like you said, it was designed, I think it was back as far back as the 40s or 50s. It was designed, it's all antiquated now where you have curbs on a superhighway. That makes no sense whatsoever. And the concrete dividers and all that sort of thing. They're talking about raising the height of some of the bridges for safety purposes. All of that we think is great. Our biggest opposition is to the double cloverleafs, which we feel are unnecessary. We feel we can keep the same access points that we have. And in fact, the safety issue was brought up earlier, and I can speak to at least Bellevue Avenue, I believe. There's been really no history of major accidents there or a high accident volume at that intersection. So we don't believe that's really a problem. But we do endorse all the safety improvements on Route 1 itself. So that's essentially the borough's position on it. I know you're trying to give some sort of an endorsement to PennDOT this evening. If there's any way to maybe introduce some nuances in the resolution where you endorse the safety improvements, as we do with Route 1, as opposed to the cloverleafs, which we feel are completely unnecessary and in fact are going to worsen safety, traffic, congestion, all that within Langhorne Borough and on into 413 into Middletown.
Thank you.
So thank you again. What I think I discovered when I looked up the specifics to come to the meeting tonight is, do you folks in fact meet every 2 weeks? Or is it once a month?
Well, most of the year we meet every 2 weeks.
Wow.
During the summer months, we tend to meet once a month, and then I believe oftentimes in December it's only once a month. But all the meeting dates are posted on the township website.
Yeah, well, God bless you for doing it every 2 weeks. It's just remarkable. Thank you.
I think, I don't, you can step down. I just wanted to, I think clearly we've heard from several residents from Langhorne Borough, and I think prior to tonight we've all heard from different residents from Langhorne Borough. We understand that there is a sentiment from the borough which is very strong, and so we acknowledge it. But I think at this point I'd like to move on with the motion that I made, which was a motion to communicate general support for the Route 1 project to PennDOT, and there's been a motion and a second, and so at this point I'm going to call it for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0. And I think what we'll do is table any further discussion about the Route 1 project and all the details of it to a later date, and hopefully after some more public input. In particular, public input from some more Middletown residents. Not that we don't value the input of the Langhorne Borough residents, we certainly do, but I think we need an opportunity, the board does, to hear from more people on this.
Yeah, and I think we maybe emphasize communication from PennDOT standpoint as well. Maybe as we communicate our recommendations, saying, you guys also need to start reaching out and making sure that you're getting the feedback as well.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Okay. So that brings us to other business. So I will start with, I'm sorry, I don't know what your name is. Who is here for Mr. Kessler from Remington Verdict? Thank you very much. I apologize. Mr. Esposito.
Just wanted to announce that the board held an executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss litigation matters. I think the board heard from me enough tonight, so that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Esposito. Ms. Tealy-Cools.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hanna.
I just recommend that all citizens check out the traffic study and provide your input because it's greatly needed.
Thank you, Ms. Hanna. Ms. Payne.
Nothing further.
Ms. Kane.
Nothing further.
Ms. Corporal. I have nothing further other than I would just like to one more time reiterate my sincere appreciation and thanks to the 4 volunteer fire companies and to our own 244 Office of Fire and Emergency Management and all the other individuals who were involved with that meeting on last Saturday to discuss our fire services in the township. It was just a really, really great day, and I'm optimistic about our ability to move forward with some common goals. And so with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.